Well, welcome everyone. Lovely to see you and to be able to meet in a smaller group, more intimate conversation, and obviously still very open to your thoughts, ideas and questions this afternoon. Our next interview, someone some of you may know well, I've certainly met and enjoyed conversing with before, is Annette Nazareth, who's chair of the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. And our subject is transitioning America's economy through the voluntary carbon market, which is gaining momentum and playing an increasing role, but of course throws up all sorts of questions: what it is, what carbon credits do look like, should look like, and any bumps along the way. Annette is also a former regulator, so she kind of knows it from both sides. And I'm just going to kick us off, Annette, by saying, why is a voluntary carbon market so essential to hitting that 1.5 degree target?
Well, that's a great question. It's really essential because it's really the only way that we will achieve our 1.5 target. It is a really essential means of accelerating our transition and a just transition to 1.5. The compliance markets alone will not get us there. And this is a very effective and important way to mobilize billions of dollars that otherwise wouldn't be available into climate mitigation that otherwise wouldn't happen. And so we're very excited about the potential for the voluntary carbon market. But first and foremost, it has to be rooted in integrity. And that is a big focus, as you can imagine, of the Integrity Council of the Voluntary Carbon Market, because our view is that in order to scale these markets, they have to be efficient, they have to be transparent, they have to be effective. And that is a big part of what we're focused on today.
So just tell us a bit more about how you go about that. I mean, integrity is always a big, bold claim, isn't it? And of course, once you've made it, you're likely to be tested on it very rigorously. So what are those kind of market rules that you feel are fundamental and deliverable enough and checkable enough to take you where you want to be in the voluntary carbon market?
Well, there are many elements to it, but the most important one that we're focused on first is in creating a definitive global threshold standard for what a high integrity carbon credit looks like. And then we want to build the guardrails around that to ensure that the integrity is put in place not just today, but will withstand the test of time. So to do that, we have put together a very capable group of expert panelists from across the carbon value chain and who represent a number of geographies, who are basically defining what a core carbon credit, our core carbon principles, and what those will entail. And the key there, again, is to ensure that we have consistency of quality across carbon credits, so that when people buy carbon credits, they know what they're getting. They know that they're getting high quality, high integrity, and that they're purchasing them in markets that also have high integrity and have transparency and are, well overseen and regarded.
So what kind of range of people would they be? I was interested that you said across a number of geographies, jurisdictions.
Yes, well,
and also some people will be very familiar here with the carbon chain. Some of us probably are learning more about it as we go along. So,
right.
I mean, I'm just interested in what's the bench of knowledge that you need to deliver on that.
Right.
Because you've obviously put that in place with a view
Yes.
to it looking very testable.
Well, we have a number of climate scientists,
Yeah.
and we have 12 experts who are climate scientists, and then we've put together an additional body with an additional 11 experts in particular project types. It's a very interesting process. They're all highly regarded, strongly opinionated, have a lot of experience, and so I think we're really getting the views of the best and the brightest in this area in order to create these core carbon principles, which we're very excited that we're approaching the time when we're going to be ready to launch them for public consultation.
And I think one of the choices that the sector has to make is how much to kind of simplify what it's doing, because you can end up with a lot of acronyms. I mean, we tried to sort of boil it down this morning, and occasionally, you know, I would just sort of say, well, I mean, hang on, what does this really mean? You know, everybody's talking about 3 letters. And there's a lot of talk about clean in the voluntary carbon market, which is an acronym. I don't know if you like it, but I'm going to get you to tell us if you do or don't like something called clean.
Well, it's something that we've adopted, actually, at the ICVCM to, you know, describe what we're trying to achieve. So, you know, we believe that the voluntary carbon market really can be catalytic. I mean, it really can accelerate our transition, a just transition to 1.5 degrees. L is local. I mean, it's very important that we be sensitive to local communities and indigenous people. And we've been, I think, very sensitive to that and have included members of those communities on our distinguished advisory group as well as our board. It's empowering, and you know, because it, you know, it ensures that you know, companies can invest in these products and, again, accelerate the transition, so it empowers us to act more aggressively. A is additional, and we know that that's a very important element of any, you know, carbon credit, that it has to be something that sort of adds to what otherwise would have been done. And is nature-based. I mean, we have to be very sensitive to sustainable development and nature-based solutions, and so that's what clean means. But
and C was catalytic, just in case you hadn't guessed.
It is very catalytic.
Therefore, it accelerates and pushes.
It accelerates and pushes. Yes, it does.
Tell us a bit more about what, I mean, that's very handy because it's a handrail to hang on to, but what high integrity carbon credits to you, and what are they not? Because this skirts this whole area of people trying, if you like, to sort the wheat from the chaff, doesn't it? And what can they take as a very solid handrail where they know that they won't be embarking on something with good intentions that is just going to go off track or be proven not to be what it was thought to be?
Well, we are really, again, working, you know, full speed on creating these core carbon principles, which are going to address a number of the most important elements of a high integrity carbon credit. So, you know, the credits will have to be additional. They'll have to be permanent. There can't be no double counting. We have to have robust quantification, validation and verification. I mean, there are lots of these attributes or you know, qualities to a high integrity carbon market that the core carbon principles will address. And obviously, it's important to say not only what they are, but how they'll be implemented. And we're also looking to have, at the same time that we propose the core carbon principles, we're also going to have you know, an assessment framework that talks about how we're going to ensure that those who are issuing these credits are in fact following these standards, and we'll continue to monitor them. So I think if you build a framework like this, then what you've done is you've created the underpinnings for a high integrity market that can exist at scale. What we have today is, you know, problems in the carbon market in that it doesn't consistently meet the needs of the people that it's intended to help, or the planet as a whole. There are some pockets of the carbon market that operate quite well, but it's not consistent enough across the board for us to be able to have the confidence to scale this at the level that we need to scale it in order to meet our net zero targets.
So what would the incentive be if you say that there are pockets of very good practice and then a lot of slightly dubious or at least untransparent practice here? Why are you so confident that it will scale as opposed to being something that you've embarked on? You know what you're on about, you know what you're looking for, but that's a different matter as in I used to be policy editor. And the one question I used to always dread getting asked, and it always came in, you know, bold in the side from the editor in an edit was, will it scale? How do you know it will scale? So now I just pass it on to you.
Well, I am very confident that it will scale because I think we know that there's a lot of interest on the part of the public in engaging in any way they can in getting us to our climate goals. But no one wants to do that and then be criticized that they've engaged in greenwashing or that they've somehow used corporate assets in a way that was inappropriate. So there's a tremendous hunger for this product, but to do it in a way that really has high integrity. And, you know, I was a former markets regulator. I think I understand how markets operate. I'm very confident that because of the structure that we're putting in place, we really are, to the full extent possible, sort of mimicking what very high quality regulated markets look like. And those high integrity regulated markets are enormously successful. So I'm actually quite confident.
And who will police this initiative, and how do you set up that kind of framework where you can be rather certain that it is being policed? And of course, it's technology changes. I'm sure that's your friend in many ways, but they're probably also something that you need to be constantly iterating.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we are going to, at the Integrity Council, you know, remain responsible for curating the CCPs, and we're also going to be talking about how that ongoing surveillance, essentially, and checks and balances will be done. Obviously, you know, in the regulated world, the regulators do it, and you know, we don't have that benefit right now. But frankly, one thing I like to say is that we're really building a framework here that is as close to and as adjacent to regulated markets as we can.
Interesting.
And that's where I think, you know, having some experience as a market regulator is helpful. So whether it's you know, the transparency that exists, the trade reporting, you know, registries, the markets on which they operate and how those markets are regulated, all of those things are relevant. And we're, again, trying to design this in a way that is so similar to the regulated markets that if at any point in time governments decide they'd like to have their hand at it and take it back, we're trying to build this in a somewhat modular way where they could do that and not have to make a lot of changes.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, and you would that be good development in the sense you'd have proved your case, but then it would sort of move a bit?
Sure. No, I'm not doing this to have a job for the rest of my life. I actually am hopefully doing this to help
these conferences.
Exactly. Well, no, then I can just be a kibitzer about how well the governments are doing. But no, but I think the most important, first and foremost, the most important thing is that we achieve our policy goals. But I do think, you know, ultimately this is, again, my confidence is this is going to be an enormous market. And so the more help we can get, the better. I mean, the other thing that a lot of people don't perhaps understand intuitively is that even today, some of the voluntary carbon markets do have regulated adjacencies. For example, some carbon credits have futures that have developed on them. And the futures market, at least in the US, I can tell you, is regulated. It's regulated by the CFTC, the Commodity Future Trading Commission. And so the CFTC, as you probably know already, has a great interest in this, both because they do believe that you're going to see a lot more trading of futures in these products, particularly if the market scales. But also because they think there'll be so much activity in the cash market, and they do have anti-fraud authority there as well. So one of the things that we have done with the Integrity Council is to keep in touch with the regulators like the CFTC and also speak to the international bodies like IOSCO to make sure that what we're doing, again, will provide them, not only, you know, be helpful to them, but provide them with the kind of information that would be useful for them to surveil these markets as well.
We got a question submitted from someone who couldn't be here, but was very keen that I ask it to you. How do you ensure assets are permanent and don't risk being taken as profit in the future?
Well, that is, you know, the proposal on that will be part of our core carbon principles. So I don't want to get ahead of where our group is, and I'm probably not the world's expert on permanence in the carbon markets. But those are very important questions that will be addressed as part of the consultation.
And companies keen to invest in nature-based solutions, where should they be thinking of starting?
Well, you know, I would say that today, I'm sure, I can't tell them exactly what to invest in, but, you know,
yeah, that would
today,
be a good tip.
that would be great if I knew that. No, look, I think today what we're seeing is a number of very responsible players are investing in nature-based solutions. But unfortunately, with the market structure today, in order for them to be confident, they have to hire experts on their staffs or pay a lot of money for consultants to do the kind of due diligence that's necessary to ensure that the projects are high integrity and that they do have permanence. And that's fine for those who are able to do that, but not everyone has that expertise. And frankly, I don't think there are enough climate scientists in the world to do that at scale, which is why we need to, leverage this and catalyze this by having core carbon principles and having those who issue the credits follow these standards. Then you'll know what you're buying. I'd like to say, imagine if every time you went to the stock market and you wanted to buy IBM, you had to do diligence on, is this a legitimate company, and what do they do, and how much did they make? And you wouldn't have the capital markets that we have today. And so likewise, we're trying to have a situation where when you buy a carbon credit that is CCP compliant, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, so it's kind of charting the regulatory path, but it's also enabling, and it's intended to bring more activity. We've got 5 minutes for questions. Who would like to ask Annette anything? Except she says she can't tell you what to invest.
I can't tell you what to invest.
Sorry, that one we can't do. But has anyone got anything that they would like to ask?
There's one back there.
Yeah, you're much better with a long sight than me. Hi.
Yes.
We're talking about something very, very simple. And I'm curious whether you found that there are any parallels with, say, the commodity markets regulators.
Yes. Well, thanks for that question. The question was whether we've thought about really how similar this is to the way some commodity markets operate and sort of are we, creating this in a way that is consistent with that? And I would say absolutely. One of the things that we've really focused on is that while the carbon markets obviously will have some special attributes, the bottom line is it's another commodity, right? And far be it from us to reinvent the wheel on regulated commodity markets. And in fact, we have borrowed extensively or frankly copied much of what exists in the existing markets, and also have, as I said earlier, been in close contact with the regulators who do regulate commodity markets, in this case the CFTC, again to be consistent with how they think they should operate. You may know that the CFTC last week had a very helpful workshop, roundtable, I forget what they called it, but a public event where they had several panels talking about the carbon markets, and there were several members or participants from the Integrity Council of the Voluntary Carbon Market who participated in that. So, yes.
I tried to work out this relationship quite some time ago, and one of the things that I was interested in was to see whether the London Metals Exchange offered any kind of model that would be useful for globalizing the voluntary markets. That was at a time when, people, is it a compliance market, is a voluntary market, the price is too low. And there's some oddities with, trying to maintain a reasonable price profile of something you're trying to get rid of. So
Just get an answer to that. Just see if there's anyone else who wants to come in, but quick answer on that?
Well, quick answer is, I think you raise a good point. There are a number of markets, frankly, not just the London markets, but in the US and Singapore and other places as well, that are very interested in trading these products and are working on a number of the issues that you suggest. And I think that's very helpful. Frankly, as you know, today, most of these products trade over the counter. And while I have nothing against over-the-counter markets, I think if this is really going to be done at scale, and if you want to see real price transparency and and the like, then bringing buyers and sellers together on platforms, whether it's the Mercantile Exchange or London Stock Exchange or CME or whatever, it will be very helpful to have those markets trade. And frankly, not surprisingly, given the robustness of our capital markets in general, a lot of those markets are very excited about the possibility of trading CCP eligible products and are working apace on how they would do that.
Is there any other last question? Otherwise, we'll roll on. Oh, yes. Sorry, lady over here.
Are you considering co-benefits for carbon offsets in what you're doing?
Yes, thank you. The question was whether we're considering co-benefits or additional attributes to the CCPs, and we are considering them, and we're considering how those would be tagged in the public disclosure of the transactions. There's a little bit of a tension between having too many co-benefits and sort of decreasing the standardization of the products. But needless to say, there are some co-benefits that people care deeply about, and that again, as part of our consultation, we'll talk about tagging those.
That it? Any last thoughts? Otherwise, we can roll on. Of course, some of this will become relevant as we go through the afternoon and look at the links. So, Annette, I will say thank you very much indeed. Lovely to see you again.
Wonderful to see you again.
Same time somewhere else?
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks very much, Annette Nazareth.